Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Sotah, Parak Ches, Chapter 8, Mishnah 5. Before we begin, today's day of learning is sponsored by Barry Steinberg in memory of his grandfather, Hyman Steinberg, Chaim ben Gedalia. Neshama Shel ben Aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, so the Mishnah begins, V'yasvu ha'shreitru nodaber el ha'am. And the officers would add, or they would say more in speaking to the people. And I don't know if in your Mishnayos they have this part quoted, but the rest of the pasuk continues, meaning this beginning of the Mishnah is really the beginning of a pasuk. It's the beginning of a pasuk in Devarim, in the book of Devarim. Again, all part of this whole discussion about what's happening as they're going to war. V'amru, and the officers would say, Mi ha'ish hayarei, who is the person who is fearful, v'rach ha'leivav, and faint of heart. Yelech v'yashav leveisai, that person should go and return to his home. Here again, now, so we've spoken about, and I just want to review this because I think this is something that is important to know, and I didn't really say it very clearly. So the psukim in the Torah, actually, the order that the Torah has it in is the Kohen speaking to the men before battle and telling them not to be afraid. Then the Torah talks about the officers who talk about the exemptions, who can turn back. Now, in actuality, the order is that the first thing that happens is the announcement of the exemptions, because that happens at the border, meaning when the troops are at the border of Israel, they're about to leave Israel to go do the battle outside of Israel. This is where the Torah says the officers make the announcements about the exemptions. Now, actually, as the commentaries point out, the Torah doesn't mention a Kohen there, but actually the first one to announce the exemptions was a Kohen. The Kohen did it there at the border, and the officers would repeat it louder. Meaning the Kohen would make the announcement about the exemptions, and the Kohanim would, and the officers would repeat it. When you got to the battlefield, that is where you had the Kohen Mashuach Melchama, the special anointed Kohen. Actually did it before too, I guess. Who would now make that, chizik talk, that talk about don't be afraid as you go to battle. And there, that was a Kohen would say it and repeated by another Kohen. The way I saw the repetition is, in case the first Kohen wasn't heard, the second Kohen would announce it louder. All right. Now, this Mishnah is going back to the situation where the Kohen had announced the exemptions at the border, and the officers repeated it. And now, this next thing that the officers say, which is whoever is afraid and faint of heart shall return home, that was not announced by the Kohen. That was announced by an officer and repeated by an officer. That's how it worked. That was the process. Now, at this point, so again, this is only officers speaking, and they bring up the person who is afraid. So now the question is, who is this person who's afraid? Now, whoever falls under this category of being afraid, and therefore can go back from battle, says he can go home, he's like the person who just, let's say, made Erison. He doesn't go home. He doesn't go to battle, but he stays behind to take care of the troops, food, water, fixing the roads, but he doesn't go to battle. Now, who is this person who is fearful and faint of heart? Rabbi Kiva says, when you talk about the person who is fearful and faint of heart, it's as it would be simply understood. He is unable to stand Bekishrei Melchama. They explain that he is unable to stand in the battle formations and face a drawn sword. They explain this, the Kishrei Melchama, the battle formations. The Baruch Nura says, soldiers would stand together in close formation to prevent the enemy from breaking through and separating them. That's the formations. And then there is, again, facing a sword. If you cannot handle that, then you are exempt. Why? Because if you're afraid, you're going to get everybody else afraid. You can either you're going to run and everybody's going to panic, or the mere fact that they sense from you the fear, that's going to weaken them, and therefore you should not go to battle. That's Rabbi Kiva's opinion. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, the person who is fearful and faint of heart, he is afraid from the sins that he has. And he's afraid because of the sins, he will not merit Hashem's protection in this very dangerous situation of battle. And therefore, he's the person that we're referring to. This fearful person is the person who's afraid. What's he fearful of? According to Rabbi Yossi, he's fearful of his sins. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili does not, I'm going to read here from, they bring that from the Tosfos Yantiv. Excuse me. Although Rabbi Yossi Aglili disagrees with Rabbi Akiva's explanation of the words, who is frightened and faint of heart, he agrees that a person directly afraid of fighting is exempt. Meaning, although Rabbi Yossi Aglili is not arguing on Rabbi Akiva's explanation of the sense, Rabbi Akiva says this is what it means. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, no, it doesn't only mean that, it means something more. But it doesn't exclude that also. Rabbi Yossi Aglili talks about the person who can't go to battle because he's afraid of his sins, and the Torah says, why shouldn't he go to battle? Because he shouldn't melt the hearts of his fellow soldiers. Well, that's going to happen if the guy's afraid of physical battle. Forget about his sins. If he's afraid of battle, if he's afraid of having to deal with a drawn sword on him, it's going to be the same reason applies. He's going to make everybody feel, he's going to melt the hearts of his fellow soldiers. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili is agreeing with Rabbi Akiva halachically that fearful person of war, that person goes back. Rabbi Yossi adds that it's not only that, it's even someone who is afraid of his sins, that's why he's fearful. Why is he going to have a problem? Why is he going to be fearful at war? Not only because he's afraid of dealing with battle. He's afraid that he won't merit Hashem's protection because of his sins. That is what creates the fear by him. Now here, the Rabbi Yossi Aglili adds something very interesting. Lefikach, therefore, tol saloi haTorah es kol elu sheyachzer biglalon. Therefore, the Torah provided an excuse for him by permitting the other ones that were mentioned that they go back because of him. Lefikach tol saloi haTorah es kol elu. For this reason, the Torah provides all these other exemptions as an excuse for him. Sheyachzer biglalon, he should be able to go back because of them. Meaning, basically, he says like this. Until now, we spoke about the person who didn't live in his house, didn't redeem his vineyard, didn't get married, but he has Eris and to get married. And the Torah says, those are the first ones that the Torah mentions. Says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you know why the Torah exempted those people? Really? To cover up for the person who's afraid of his Averis. Because if the only person who would lead war is the person who's afraid of his Averis, he'll be too embarrassed to do so. So therefore, we give these other stories. We give these other exemptions. They're not stories, they are actual exemptions. But the reason why those exemptions, the Torah gave those exemptions, is in order to give an excuse for the person who is really leaving because he's afraid of his Averis, for people to not know exactly why he's going back. And therefore, now again, so as they bring down here on the bottom, okay, so we're saying that really the Torah not exempted those people who didn't get married yet, didn't live in their house yet. The Torah wouldn't have exempted those people for that reason alone. It was meant to be covered for the person who's afraid of his sins. But at the end of the day, why did the Torah exempt those three?
Not to embarrass.
Why? That's not to embarrass that person, not to embarrass the person who sinned. But at the end of the day, why were those three examples used as the exemptions to cover up for him? The answer is because they do have a reason to be exempt. You know, as I said before, a person who has in his mind that someone else is going to live in his house that he never lived in is something that can disturb him. Would that have been a reason enough for the Torah to exempt him? No. But now that we need an excuse to cover up for the person who's afraid of his Averis, that he can leave the battlefield without anybody knowing that he's leaving because of his sins, the Torah gave exemptions to those people that there is reason to give them exemption. Okay, now, so that's that. So that's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Now we have Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi is not Rabbi Yossi Aglili. It's a different Rabbi Yossi. He's Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. So Rabbi Yossi says like this: Almana l'kayin gadol. If we're talking about a almana that is married to a kohen gadol, or grusha chalutza l'kohen hedyet, or divorcee, a woman who had chalitza married to a regular kohen, mamzeres and nesina Yisrael, mamzeres and nesina, we mentioned those before, married to a regular Jewish man, Bas Yisrael Mamzel Asina, or a regular, kosher lineage woman, Jewish woman, to a mamazer to Nasin, those examples, those sins, that is what the Torah is referring to when it says the person who is fearful and faint of heart. So what this means is like this. Rabbi Yossi, in the last opinion of Rabbi Yossi, is an agreement that the person who's fearful is fearful of his sins. That would be a reason for him to turn back. But what are the sins he has to be fearful of? So we have a whole list here of examples. The examples of sins here are Torah prohibitions. It has to be, according to Rabbi Yossi, this third opinion of Rabbi Yossi, has to be that the person is afraid of a sin that he has committed that is a Torah prohibition. But let's say it would be a rabbinic prohibition, that would not be a reason for him to go back. Because basically, that's the kind of thing that, I'm not sure what the explanation is, because he violated a rabbinic prohibition, we're saying that he can't go back. According to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the second opinion, when he mentioned anybody afraid of a sin, it means any sin, even a rabbinic prohibition. Even a rabbinic prohibition, if you're afraid of that, then you don't go to battle. According to the third opinion, which is just Rabbi Yossi, not Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he says the only sin that you can be fearful of that will allow you to return they'll tell you not to go to battle is if you transgressed a Torah prohibition. So a rabbinic prohibition, then you don't turn back. Now, I don't know what the explanation to that is. Is that just rabbinic prohibition? He shouldn't be afraid. He'll still be protected. Or rabbinic prohibition because it's not as serious. Like I said, because it's not as serious, he'll be protected. Or because it's not as serious. I mean, I guess it's the same idea. If it's not as serious, then he shouldn't be that fearful. And therefore, according to the third opinion, that's not going to exempt him. So that's the difference between the second and third opinion, because they both spoke about, being afraid of sin. But the point is, what level sin? According to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the second opinion, even a rabbinic prohibition, if he's fearful of, he returns from war. According to Rabbi Yossi, the third opinion, it only is for a Torah prohibition that he returns. Now, one last point here. In the list of things mentioned, which are all lists of forbidden marriages, which again, it doesn't only mean forbidden marriages, it means any kind of Torah prohibition. But these forbidden marriages were examples. All right, so if we quickly go through them again. Widder to a Kohen Gadol, Gerusha and Chalutza to Kohen Hedyot. All right. Can a Kohen Hedyot, when we say the prohibition of a Kohen Hedyot not marrying a Chalutza, is that rabbinic or a Torah prohibition? It's rabbinic.
It's rabbinic.
And we're saying, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the rabbinic prohibitions are not reasons for you not to go to battle. So therefore, they bring down here on the notes from the Taisvus Yantif that it's true. According to Rabbi Yossi, if he's only married to a Chalutza, he would not return from battle. But anytime we go through this whole list of forbidden marriages, we always mention Chalutza to a Kohen, and therefore we list it here together again. But again, but from the point of halacha, it's actually different because chalutza to a kohen, to a regular kohen, is only a rabbinic prohibition. Therefore, according to the third opinion, he would not go back from going to battle because of that. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.